Galloway recently made an appearance on the Chris Williamson podcast, along with The View, and we get to hear a lot of the same points that have been rehashed over and over and over again. And that is that young men just need to be told to step up and to serve their roles as protectors, providers, and procreate. And in and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with those talking points. But within the context that he's saying it, they bear no weight. Because if a man is supposed to have responsibility, right? It's his responsibility to protect, then he also needs authority. And so you cannot have one without the other. And we live in a culture that adamantly opposes any kind of accountability on the side of women while placing the burden of responsibility on the men.
And we've recorded, but we've never done the same two things.
Oh, welcome to London, man.
Thank you. You did an interview with BBC Global that was titled, Young Men Are Struggling. What does this mean for young women? Yeah. This men struggling, women most affected framing is wild to me.
Yeah.
Does that irritate you in the same way as it does me, to have to do this weird sort of land acknowledgement to the challenges that women face, even as we're talking about the problems that men are facing?
I think it's productive to think of it as a societal problem. Well, moving to solutions, I think the only way you get stuff done here, or the most effective way to get stuff done, and the lesson is, I've spent the majority of my life struggling with this issue professionally, and that is, I think I'm good at being right. I'm not very good at being effective. And there's a difference.
Okay.
And if you really want to help young men, and you want to think about starting a conversation that gets programs and a change in mentality and a focus on the investments needed to lift up young men, I think it's done more effectively through the context of lifting up all young people. So the basic line is...
So this in and of itself seems to me like just one of the most profoundly disconnected ideas. And here's why. I think if you're based in reality, if you're an actual working person and you've spent time in the physical world, you've worked at a company, you've worked at multiple companies. I'm coming to this from the perspective of a millennial. I started working from the age of 14. I worked for a broker. My mom was working for a real estate agent. Then I worked at, the library, the golf course. I did, tons of jobs throughout high school, through college, and then in my early career. And this is the disconnect. It's the fact that people think that you can simultaneously lift everybody up and somehow the kind of menial jobs are just going to disappear, or AI is going to do them and everything's going to become great. I mean, I think we've lived through that experiment, right? Like millennials, Gen Z, we understand, hey, somehow they tell us that everything's supposed to be getting more efficient, right? Everything's supposed to be more automated, more efficient, more affordable. But somehow the cost of living seems to go up. Now you need 2 working adults in a home, unless you make upwards of 120,000, probably 140, 150,000 if you live anywhere in the Bay Area or major city. And so this idea that you can just simultaneously, it's like the rising tide raises all ships. I just don't buy it. I don't think it's based in any kind of reality. These are the kinds of ideas that come from people who sit far away from the working world. Because at the end of the day, if you want to have restaurants, right? If you want to have your food served, if you want to go to the grocery store, you're going to have cashiers, you're going to have grocery store clerks. Who's going to work those jobs? Like, this is the framing of this whole conversation is stupid. And he's going to get into a little bit more. Let's listen to this.
women aren't going to continue to thrive and the country isn't going to continue to prosper as long as young men are flailing. So this needs to be a collective effort.
I do understand, and I get the difference between ideological purity or reality-based insight
Yeah.
and effective communication,
Yeah.
press release and stuff like that. I had this conversation with Richard Reeves as well.
Yeah.
I'm just so sick of this land acknowledgement thing where we have to prostrate ourselves and say, well, we know that women are, it's only been recent that they got equal access to education and employment, and we must not forget that maternity leave must improve, and we must, and after we've done all of this work, we can say, and now we can talk about male mental health, and now we can talk about male suicide. Could you imagine if there was a video that was titled, "Young Women Are Struggling. What does this mean for young men?" Like, that wouldn't happen. At no point does somebody do this disclaimer about the struggles of men in suicide in order to talk about female breast cancer. That doesn't happen.
Oh, there's definitely, look, there's a bias, but it's understandable. For 99% of our time on this planet, there has been, men of my generation had an advantage. And so the muscle.
So, again, it's the whole framing. So Scott Galloway, I don't know if you caught that. He says, it's recently that women are thriving. And so define thriving, right? Does that mean that more women are working full-time jobs where they have comparable wages to men? Is it a wage competition? Is that how we determine thriving? Like if we're looking at society, right, which is what he kind of based it on, how are we determining thriving? So depression rates are skyrocketing amongst young people. There's more male suicides. The women too, I would argue, are not thriving. Professionally, they might be doing better than men, but is that even a measure that anybody cares about? Is that a statistic that you look at and feel great as you have a microwavable dinner with your 5 cats and your glass of wine? Like, who cares about these stupid metrics? This is why I think these people are just fundamentally completely disconnected from the actual reality of people, living in the physical, working, non-podcast world. It's all kind of theoretical statistics. Well, there's more women in college, and because they chose it, that must be great. It's like, since when? This is another thing that just irritates the hell out of me. It's the fact that you chose something automatically means that it's good. Now, I know for the modern Western mind, it's crazy to suggest otherwise, but I'm going to suggest a wild thing, and I think that there needs to be societal pressure to choose the opposite of what we've been doing. And what the opposite of what we've been doing is starting families and normalizing a one-income household. I think part of the economic problem is the fact that everything is based on a 2-income household. I live in a college town here, and rental prices where I live are based on either a 2-income household or 6 students that live like animals, and people into their 20s and even 30s who still have roommates. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, I remember working my first real job and realizing, like, all these people are 27, 28, 29. They all live with roommates. Like, so there's something fundamentally wrong about a society that claims all this prosperity, thriving, college-educated graduates who are still living in their mid to late 20s and 30s with roommates, and not because they love to have the company. No, it's from necessity.
Memory, the reflex reaction, the gag reflex is understandable. So, but I mean, the bias is real. I'll say at a conference that women are doing better in college, right? 60-40, they score better. 7 to 10 high school valedictorians are women. Prefrontal cortices of women are ahead of a man's until the age of 25, the gas on, gas off executive function that lends itself well to academia, which to a certain extent has been shaped around the attributes that more easily come to a woman, has resulted in most graduate schools now, or what we think of as professional schools, have a greater representation of women. So if I say at a conference that women have been shown to have better bedside manner, better studies that make them better doctors, everyone politely collapses and nods their head. Even I think the people who may not agree with that.
So again, it's this looking at these kind of statistics that are largely based in, professional life. And it also is this kind of, at the end of the day, it's like Chris Williamson was on Tucker Carlson podcast, and I'm not one to say, oh, if it's a liberal, they don't have any kind of good ideas, but the framing is always in this psychological evolutionary framing where we have to imagine that we have somehow evolved past what our ancestors were, and because we live in modernity, because we have little tiny computers in our pockets that let us talk to anybody and see whatever we want, that somehow we are smarter in every single way than our predecessors. And I think anybody who's been around for the last 20, 30 years knows that this is not the case. We are not developing, we are not advancing, we are not evolving in every aspect. We might be evolving in the sense, or I wouldn't even say evolving, I would say we're advancing a very small set of technological advancements, mostly in the realm of microchips. But when we're talking about architecture, art, show me any grand piece of architecture, piece of art that's been done in, in the last decade. I'm sure there are some, but by no means are we living in some sort of, cultural flourishing for all the arts. Same with literature. I mean, does literature still exist? It's like these people, just their whole framing is based on the idea that just because we come after these people in the past, that we're somehow smarter, more advanced, we have more insights, we're more egalitarian. And I think it's a completely wrong way to view the world.
Feel pressure to nod their head. If I say that throughout history, men have been needed to be more risk aggressive, either to fight wars or immediately pick up a spear and go hunt something to feed the tribe. And therefore, men have an easier time making the leap of faith to be entrepreneurs, and they're more risk aggressive and start crazier ideas. There's a very uncomfortable pause in the room. You can say women make better doctors.
So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I wanted to end it here where, again, he's saying that, maybe they might be, have more proclivity to be leaders. And the messaging, and I want to have a solution to, because I think these these conversations I listen to, because obviously I'm still somewhat young, although arguably not anymore. But it's, I think we have to have, people, whether it's fathers, it's bosses, it's college professors, it's anyone who has any kind of pulpit in front of a small to medium audience, doesn't really matter what. But I think we need to be pushing the societal messaging that, as men, which this is, something that's we're very comfortable doing, like men have duties, right? No one argues with that. And women also have duties, but in the past, or I would say in the, our kind of modern world now, we don't say that women have duties. We say women should have the choice, right? You should have the choice to be a mother and it shouldn't be looked down upon, or you should have the choice to pursue your career. And I think it's exactly this type of messaging. And it honestly is just a lack of balls, because we should, obviously you have the choice. Everybody, even in the past, they still had the choice. The difference is there was a lot more societal pressure, and I would say societal encouragement. I would say pressure, not only in the negative connotation of the word, but I would say pressure as in support, because this was a path that everybody understood was going to be the one that was going to be a long term, the most not only beneficial to you and everyone around you, but the one that made the most sense. Whereas in now, it's like, well, you can wait until your 30s and then you can do IVF. And there's all this messaging around all these choices. And we need to start being honest with, first of all, our own family. If you're a father, which I am, we need to be honest and say, look, like the idea that at 32 you can start looking for, your perfect husband and settle down and then everything else is going to fall into place is it's not that high. It's not impossible. It happens, of course, but it's not necessarily smart. And if you actually want to have a family, you want to have grandchildren, you want to have children, then you need to put this as a priority. And for men, I think the messaging that we should be pushing in the modern economy is that the idea of, finding the job necessarily is kind of an idea of the past, in my opinion. I think we're going to be looking at more entrepreneurs, more, just working for yourself, because at least in my experience, I worked and got to, I would say, the highest level that I could in this one company, and it wasn't anywhere close to what I needed to be making to actually afford a life that would be, deemed normal even several decades ago. And so luckily I had parents that had pushed me into that direction, but I just don't think they pushed hard enough, because, until I kind of realized that, just finding a nice cushy job where I could kind of slowly advance and then, have the house, the car and all that just wasn't going to happen. And I think if anything, for men, we need to be, as teachers, as educators, having more people in the trades, showing the kind of possibilities that you can do with engineering, with being able to, manufacture, prototype, build things on the fly. I mean, that's one of the benefits of, having really cheap 3D printers, having cheap CNC machines, and that equipment. Several decades ago, it was not very common, to have that sort of equipment just at Access. I remember being in high school and even my dad telling me about 3D printing, and it was still kind of like, fantasy at that time. And so I think the messaging that we need to be pushing is not, we need to lift all young people up, because yeah, sure, that sounds great, but no, we need to be telling young women that you too also have a duty. And your duty, if you want to have a rich, fulfilling life, not just in your 30s, but onward after 40, after 50, after 60, is you need to focus on your family. And you also need to focus on not giving so much of yourself away that you no longer are able to form attachments, and you have so many experiences, negative and positive, that it becomes like, what the dating market is today, which is, I think everybody can agree is absolutely atrocious. And I think we need to stop lying to people and saying that, having all these choices is the best thing that ever happened. No, I think we need to be more direct with people and have the societal pressures that existed in decades past. And for men, that means we need to be the ones delivering the message. And if it takes a while, it takes a while, but that needs to be the message. So catch you on the next one.